Did you know that one of the most famous scenes in movie history almost never happened? Marilyn Monroe standing over a subway grate, her white dress flying up around her. That moment changed cinema forever. But here's the strange part. The actor standing right next to her didn't even want to be there. When you watch The 7-Year Itch, you see a perfect romance, a beautiful woman, and a man caught between two worlds. But behind those polished scenes and glamorous moments, there are stories you've never heard, secrets about mistakes, accidents, and decisions that shaped one of the greatest comedies ever made. Let's dive in and discover 20 weird and amazing facts about The 7-Year Itch. Fact number 20. The original play was dark and uncomfortable. Before Marilyn Monroe became the face of this movie, The 7-Year Itch started as a stage play. And let me tell you, the original play was strange in ways the movie never showed. The play was darker, more uncomfortable, filled with messy situations that made audiences squirm in their seats. When the filmmakers decided to turn it into a movie, they had to make real choices about what to keep and what to change. They wanted laughs, but they also wanted people to root for the main character, Richard Sherman. So they softened the edges. They made everything prettier, nicer, and more romantic. What you see on screen is actually the cleaned-up version, Hollywood's way of saying, let's make this acceptable for families. The stage play sat in darkness and awkwardness. The movie found light and charm instead. It wasn't just adaptation, it was transformation. Fact number 19. Marilyn Monroe's co-star wanted a different actress. Tom Ewell, who played Richard Sherman, had opinions about casting. And frankly, he wasn't convinced that Marilyn Monroe was the right choice for this role. You see, in 1955, there was a debate happening. Some people thought Monroe was too much of a symbol, too famous, too something. Tom Ewell wanted someone different, someone maybe less well-known, someone who wouldn't overshadow the story. But the director, Billy Wilder, knew exactly what he was doing. He understood that Marilyn Monroe wasn't just an actress, she was a force of nature. She brought something to the screen that no one else could bring. And when Tom Ewell finally stood across from her during filming, he understood. The chemistry between them wasn't planned. It was real. Sometimes the actor doesn't believe in the casting until the moment they're standing face to face with their co-star. That's when the magic happens. Fact number 18. The famous subway grate scene was shot in the coldest weather of the year. Remember that scene? The white dress? The wind blowing it up? It's iconic. It's beautiful. It's unforgettable. But here's what most people don't know. They filmed it in the middle of the coldest night of the year. Not during a warm summer day. Not during pleasant weather. No, the temperature was freezing. There was real wind, real cold, and a real sense of misery on set. Marilyn Monroe stood there again and again as the dress flew up. Take after take after take. The crew watched her shiver. They watched her smile anyway. She never complained, not once. She was professional. She understood the importance of the moment. And even though she was cold, even though her teeth were probably chattering, she gave the world one of the most beautiful images in cinema history. The wind was real. The cold was real. But the beauty? That was all performance. That was all her. Fact number 17. Billy Wilder, almost fired, Marilyn Monroe. During filming, Billy Wilder was a legendary director, a perfectionist, a genius, but he was also a man who could lose his patience. During filming, Marilyn Monroe was struggling, not with the acting, but with the pressure, the expectations, and the constant need to be perfect. She arrived late to set. She forgot lines. She needed more takes than anyone expected, and Billy Wilder grew frustrated. One day, things came to a head. Wilder was ready to replace her. He was ready to fire her and bring in someone else. But something stopped him. Maybe it was her talent. Maybe it was the footage he'd already shot. Maybe it was the understanding that no one else could do what she was doing. So instead of firing her, he stayed. He kept pushing her. He kept asking for more. And eventually, Marilyn Monroe found her rhythm. She found the character. She found the magic. What looked like a disaster almost happened. But art saved the day. Fact number 16. The movie was filmed during Marilyn Monroe's personal crisis. Most of us didn't know this for decades. While Marilyn Monroe was filming The 7-Year Itch, her personal life was falling apart. Her marriage was ending. She was dealing with depression. She was fighting for respect in an industry that saw her as a beautiful object, not as a serious artist. And yet, every morning she came to set. She put on that beautiful costume. She smiled. She acted. She gave everything she had. When you watch the movie, you see joy and beauty and lightness. But that joy was created while she was hurting. That beauty came from pain. It's one of the most heartbreaking and inspiring things about this film. She wasn't just acting a part. She was surviving. She was proving something to herself and to the world. The girl on screen was stronger than the person behind the camera knew. Fact number 15. Tom Ewell's jealousy was partly real. Tom Ewell had to play a character who was jealous, frustrated, and caught between desire and loyalty. But here's the thing about acting. Sometimes the emotion you portray starts to feel real. During filming, Tom Ewell found himself genuinely uncomfortable around Marilyn Monroe. Not because of anything she did wrong, but because of the attention. Every camera, every crew member, every light, it all focused on her. He was standing right there, acting his heart out, but the world was watching her. That's a strange feeling for an actor. It's lonely. It's isolating. So in some ways, his acting wasn't just pretend. His frustration was real. His jealousy had roots in actual experience. He knew what his character felt because he felt some of it too. That wasn't acting. It was living, and it made every scene feel true. Fact number 14. The set was designed to make Marilyn Monroe look smaller. Here's a secret about filmmaking that most people don't understand. Directors and designers make tiny choices that add up to big effects. Billy Wilder and his team made decisions about how the sets were built. They chose furniture sizes, doorway heights, and camera angles. All of these choices were made to make Marilyn Monroe look smaller, more delicate, more vulnerable. In real life, she was strong. She was powerful. But on screen, they wanted her to seem like someone who needed protection, someone who needed to be looked after. This wasn't accidental. This was intentional. The art direction wasn't just about making the apartment pretty. It was about controlling how the audience saw her. It was about power, about control, about deciding who gets to be big and who gets to be small on the screen. Fact number 13. The composer wrote the theme song in just 2 hours. Alfred Newman was one of the greatest film composers of all time. He wrote music that made people cry, that made them laugh, that made them remember. For The 7-Year Itch, he sat down and wrote that famous theme song in just 2 hours. 2 hours. Can you imagine? Most musicians would spend weeks on something so important. But Newman was a genius. His fingers flew across the piano. The melody came from somewhere deep inside. It was perfect. It still is. When you hear those opening notes, you know exactly what movie you're watching. You know you're about to enter a world of comedy, of romance, of a man caught in a beautiful moment he shouldn't be in. That music tells the whole story before anything even happens. And it came from 2 hours of pure, creative genius. Fact number 12. 1955. Audiences didn't understand the humor at first. This is strange, but true. When The 7-Year Itch first came out, audiences didn't laugh as much as the filmmakers expected. The humor was different from what people were used to. It was psychological. It was about the inner life of a character. It was about what happened inside Richard Sherman's head. People in 1955 wanted physical comedy, slapstick, obvious jokes. But this movie was subtle. It asked audiences to understand married life, to feel the temptation, to know what it was like to be attracted to someone you shouldn't be attracted to. It took time for people to understand the film's genius. Critics eventually caught on. Other filmmakers learned from it, but in those first weeks, the audience reaction was confused. Over time, people realized they were watching something special, something that understood human nature in a way most comedies didn't. The movie grew smarter as people watched it. Fact number 11. Marilyn Monroe did her own singing in one scene. There's a scene where Marilyn Monroe sings. It's not a big musical number. It's just a moment, just her voice. But Billy Wilder wanted to use her real voice, not a dubbed voice. So she sang, and her voice was small and vulnerable and real. In 1955, it was common to have actresses lip-sync while professional singers recorded the music. But Wilder wanted authenticity. He wanted the audience to hear the real Marilyn Monroe. So there she was, singing live, her voice floating through the scene. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't a professional singer's voice, but it was hers. It was genuine, it was human. When you hear her sing, you're hearing something that most movies would have hidden away. You're hearing the real person, not the icon. Horror. Fact number 10. The apartment's decoration told a story about the character. Every object in Richard Sherman's apartment meant something. The furniture wasn't random. The paintings weren't just pretty. The books on the shelf, the records, the decorations, they all told you who this man was. He was cultured but not pretentious. He was successful but still lonely. He was a man who had built a nice life, but something was missing. Billy Wilder and his production designer understood that every single thing you put in front of the camera says something. It's a language without words. When you watch the film, you're learning about Richard Sherman not just from what he says, but from where he sits, what he reads, what he listens to. The apartment became a character itself. It became the stage for his internal struggle. It was a masterclass in visual storytelling. Fact number 9. The ventilation system. Blowing Marilyn Monroe's dress required weeks of planning. That famous subway grate scene wasn't just about pointing a fan at her dress. The technical team had to plan it for weeks. They studied wind patterns. They calculated how much force would be needed. They tested different fabrics to see which ones would move the right way. They positioned cameras to catch every angle. They had to make sure that the wind was strong enough to create the iconic image, but not so strong that it was dangerous. Marilyn Monroe's safety was important. So was the image they were creating. It was an engineering problem disguised as a magical moment. The beauty we see on screen required mathematics, physics, and careful planning. There were probably 10 people working behind the scenes to make that one moment happen. And when it finally worked, when the dress flew up just right, everyone cheered. It wasn't just a scene. It was a small miracle. Fact number 8. The script was rewritten during filming. The original script for The 7-Year Itch went through massive changes. Billy Wilder and his co-writer didn't just follow the script, they rewrote it constantly. They changed lines after hearing how the actors said them. They added scenes that weren't in the original plan. They cut scenes that weren't working. This was dangerous and difficult. It meant the actors never quite knew what was coming. It meant the crew had to be flexible and ready to change. But it also meant the final film was better than anyone imagined. The script grew smarter as they filmed. The humor became sharper. The character relationships became deeper. What looked like a finished product was actually a living, breathing thing that kept improving. It's one of the reasons the film feels so natural, so alive, so real. The script didn't just tell a story, it discovered a story as it went. Fact number 7. Tom Ewell had never been in a major film before. This Tom Ewell was a stage actor. He was brilliant on Broadway. He understood the craft. He understood the audience. But he'd never been in a major Hollywood film. The 7-year itch was his big chance, his moment to prove himself. And he was terrified. He didn't know the rhythms of film acting. He didn't know how to adjust his performance for the camera instead of the audience. He had to learn it all while filming one of the most important movies of the year. Every day was a learning experience. Every take taught him something new. By the end of filming, he understood something essential. Film acting is different. It's more subtle. It's more internal. It's about what your eyes show, not what your voice projects. He grew as an artist during this film, and his performance shows that growth. He gets better and better as the film goes on. It's the story of an actor becoming a film star. Fact number 6. The movie was filmed in CinemaScope, which was brand new technology. CinemaScope was revolutionary. It was a new way to capture images on film. It was wider. It was bigger. It was different from anything audiences had seen before. Billy Wilder decided to use this new technology for the 7-year itch. This was a bold choice. It meant he had to think differently about composition, about how to frame his shots, about how to use the extra space on screen. Some directors were afraid of the new technology, but Wilder embraced it. He used it to create images that were stunning, that were modern, that showed the audience a world that felt expansive and alive. The widescreen made the New York City apartments feel bigger. It made the streets feel more crowded. It made the whole story feel more immersive. Watching this film on CinemaScope was like seeing the world through new eyes. Fact number 5. The studio almost changed. Marilyn Monroe's hair color for the role. Can you imagine? The iconic blonde hair, the symbol of her beauty. The studio executives wanted to darken it. They thought a darker hair color would make her look more sophisticated for this role. They wanted to change who she was to fit their vision of the character. But Marilyn Monroe refused. She understood that her appearance was part of who she was. She understood that the blonde hair meant something. She stood her ground. She fought for herself. And she won. The studio backed down. She kept her hair the way it was. This might seem like a small thing, but it's actually huge. It shows that even in an era when studios controlled everything, there were moments when actors could fight back, when they could say no, when they could protect their own vision of themselves. Fact number 4. The friendship between Marilyn Monroe and Tom Ewell lasted for years. You might think that once filming ended, these two actors would never see each other again. But that's not what happened. They became genuine friends. They cared about each other. Years later, when life got difficult for one of them, the other was there. They understood each other in a way that only people who've shared something special can understand. They'd been through something together. They'd created art together. That creates a bond, a real connection. It's one of the beautiful things about filmmaking. Sometimes you meet someone, you work intensely for a few months, and then you carry that person with you for the rest of your life. The friendship between Marilyn Monroe and Tom Ewell proves that the magic they created on screen wasn't fake. It was real. It was genuine. And it lasted. Fact number 3. Billy Wilder had to explain the concept to Marilyn Monroe multiple times. Here's something that might surprise you. Marilyn Monroe didn't always understand the script right away. The character's psychology was complex. The situation was morally complicated. So Billy Wilder had to explain it to her, again and again, not because she wasn't intelligent, she absolutely was, but because the character required understanding something that was almost invisible. You had to understand married life. You had to understand temptation. You had to understand the loneliness that comes even when you have everything. Billy Wilder would sit down and talk to her. He would explain the character's internal world. He would help her see what Richard Sherman was feeling. And slowly, She began to understand. And that understanding made her better. It made her performance richer. It showed in every scene. She wasn't just saying lines. She was understanding the human drama underneath. Fact number 2. The original ending was different and much darker. The ending you see in the film is sweet. It's romantic. It feels right. But the original script had a different ending, a darker one that questioned whether Richard Sherman had learned anything at all, one that suggested he might make the same mistakes again. Billy Wilder and his team debated this ending for weeks. They knew that audiences wanted a happy resolution. They knew that the safer choice was to give them what they wanted. But they also knew that a darker ending would be more honest, more true to life. In the end, they compromised. They created an ending that was happy, but not completely innocent. It was romantic, but not naive. It suggested that Richard Sherman had learned something, but maybe not everything. This is the power of filmmaking, the ability to make thousands of tiny choices that add up to create a complete vision. The ending you see is the result of debate, compromise, and creative choice. Fact number 1. Marilyn Monroe's famous white dress was almost destroyed during filming that white dress, that iconic, unforgettable dress. It was delicate, it was beautiful, it was expensive, and it almost got destroyed during the subway grate scene. The wind was strong, the dress flew up, the fabric bent and twisted. There was a moment when everyone on set thought they heard something tear. Everyone froze. Was the dress ruined? Could they still use this take? Did they have to start over? But the dress survived. It held together. It made it through. When the director yelled cut and everyone relaxed, there was a collective sigh of relief. They'd created the most iconic image in film history, and the dress, this beautiful, fragile piece of clothing, had survived to tell about it. Today, that dress sits in a museum. People come from all over the world to see it. They see the seams, the stitching, the careful construction, and they understand that what looked effortless on screen was actually incredibly fragile. Everything about the moment was delicate. Everything could have gone wrong. But it didn't. Bonus fact: the lost, deleted scenes and what they revealed about the character. Here's something that very few people know. Billy Wilder filmed scenes that never made it into the final film. These weren't small moments that were cut for time. These were substantial scenes that told important parts of the story. They showed Richard Sherman in situations that revealed his character in new ways. Some were funnier than what made it into the movie. Some were more revealing about his loneliness. Some showed his guilt more clearly. These scenes were deleted for different reasons. Maybe they slowed down the pacing. Maybe they made the character too sympathetic or not sympathetic enough. Maybe they duplicated information the audience already knew. But they existed, and for decades no one saw them. Then, in recent years, some of these scenes were discovered and restored. Film historians were able to piece together what Billy Wilder had originally envisioned, and it was fascinating. It was like discovering hidden chapters in a book you'd already read. These deleted scenes prove something important. The version we know and love is just one possible version. It's the best version, maybe, but it's not the only version. In the editing room, choices were made. Different choices would have created a different film. Different choices might have created a better film, or a worse one. We'll never know. But knowing that these other versions existed reminds us that filmmaking is about selecting from possibilities. It's about choosing this moment instead of that moment. It's about power and vision and the courage to cut away parts of your own work. The lost scenes teach us that what remains on screen is sacred. It's been chosen. It's been protected. It's been perfected through dozens of small decisions. The 7-Year Itch is more than just a comedy about a man and woman in New York City. It's a film about temptation, about marriage, about the moments when we're caught between who we are and who we want to be. It's about the loneliness that exists even in the most beautiful apartments. It's about the connection between two people who understand each other for just a moment in time. Making this film required courage from everyone involved. Marilyn Monroe had to be vulnerable in ways that made her uncomfortable. Tom Ewell had to learn an entirely new craft while the world watched. Billy Wilder had to trust his vision when others doubted. The crew had to solve impossible technical problems. And somehow all of that work, all of that struggle, all of that human effort created something magical. Something that still speaks to audiences 70 years later. If you enjoyed these stories, subscribe for more. Every movie hides a truth, and we'll keep uncovering them, one story at a time. Thank you for sitting with me around this campfire of cinema. Thank you for caring about the stories behind the stories. Because that's what makes us human. Our ability to tell stories, to listen to stories, and to understand ourselves through the stories of others.